Hello again and welcome. You're watching the Arise News channel. Over the next 1 hour, I will be bringing you all the top stories from across Africa. I'm Ni Weilo. This is Africa News Hour. Here are our top stories. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo, in a blistering statement, calls on President Buhari not to seek re-election in 2019. Liberian President George Weah announces a first cabinet appointments hours after taking office. And legendary jazz trumpeter Hugh Masekela, a leading figure in the struggle to end apartheid and the father of South African jazz, is dead. Good to have you. Former Nigerian President Dr. Olusegun Obasanjo has advised President Muhammadu Buhari against seeking re-election in 2019. Obasanjo, in a 13-page blistering statement entitled "The Way Out, a clarion call for Nigerian movement," says President Buhari has performed far below expectations and should therefore, quote, honorably dismount from the horse to join the League of Nigeria's former leaders whose experience, influence, wisdom and outreach can be deployed on the sidelines for the good of the country, end of quote. Former two-time Nigerian president, on the platform of People's Democratic Party, PDP, expressed utter disappointment by Buhari, whom he supported during the 2015 polls, over the then incumbent and candidate of his former party, PDP, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, while giving kudos to President Buhari for tackling the Boko Haram insurgency and his fight against corruption. Obasanjo said the president has ultimately failed in other areas, like the economy, and turning a blind eye to corruption within his government. He also berated President Buhari for what he described as his clannishness, a lack of understanding of the dynamics of politics, and his tendencies to pass the buck of his government's inadequacies to the immediate past administration. According to Obasanjo, quote, "Let nobody deceive us. The economy feeds on politics, and because our politics is depressing, our economy is even more depressing today." And he said if things were good, President Buhari would not need to come in. He was voted to fix things and not engage in the blame game, end of quote. And the immediate past caretaker chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Ahmed Makarfi, says any candidate presented by the ruling All Progressive Congress, including the current president, Muhammadu Buhari, will be defeated by the PDP in the 2019 general elections. In an exclusive interview with this day newspaper in Abuja on Monday, Makarfi observed that while Buhari stands legally qualified to seek re-election irrespective of the seeming overwhelming security and other challenges in the country, he or any other candidate will be roundly defeated by the PDP in 2019. Mr. McCarthy was also of the view that the current administration has shown great incapacity to respond to the prevailing socio-political and economic challenges in the country, while stating that his party will wait for the presidential candidate of the APC to emerge before presenting a strategy to defeat the candidate. And for more on this, the Executive Director of Newsday newspaper, Emmanuel Efeni, joins me now. It's good to have you, as always, Emmanuel.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Now, definitely I would like to take the quotes, because there's a lot of quotes here by the former President, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. Now, let's take a look at this one. OBJ described Mr. Buhari's government as clannish, and that he has turned a blind eye to corruption, and he has displayed a lack of understanding of the dynamics of politics. How would you describe a statement like that?
Well, the former president, Dr. Olusegun Obasanjo, has come out to encapsulate what a lot of critics have been saying about the Buhari administration. And recall that a week ago, Obasanjo was confronted in London about his position, whether he's endorsing President Buhari for a second term. And he said the time has not come for him to speak. Apparently, the time has come for him to speak, and he has put together a 13-page critique of the government and the failings, the perceived failings of the Buhari administration. And of course, it is important to state that he berated Buhari for the insensitivity of 7 governors coming to endorse him for a second term 24 hours after 73 Nigerians were slaughtered in Benue, which he said smacks of insensitivity. He has raised a lot of the nepotic deployment he has been talking about. Buhari has been accused of having a small group who run the government, and they happen to be people from certain geographical location. And this is the allusion Obasanjo is referring to.
All right.
That is nepotic deployment bordering on clannishness and inability to bring discipline to bear on errant members of this nepotic court. I'm quoting Obasanjo.
Yes, definitely.
So he's spot on, because even the wife of the president said a few people around the president have seized the government and is not able to rein in these people. And Obasanjo cited the case of Maina, the pension funds director who was brought in surreptitiously back into the civil service.
Yes.
And he said it's either there's a case of collusion, condonation, ineptitude, or dereliction of duty on the part of President Buhari. So he's quite spot on some of what he has mentioned here.
Right.
And when he talked about passing the buck, each time there's a problem, the Buhari administration and the APC, they throw back to the past administration. Oh, it was because of the past. And Obasanjo is saying, if things were good, we won't need to bring you in. You were brought in to fix the country, to fix the economy.
Yeah.
So why passing the buck? It's not a sign of good leadership.
All right. Now, in view of what you just said, and in view of Dr. Obasanjo's quotations and everything, now he has asked the president not to run for the 2019 polls. How do you see this playing out?
Yes. He premised his position, his suggestion, on the fact that Buhari's health is not healthy enough to stand the rigors required to run a country like Nigeria. And the tendency is that if the president is not strong enough, health-wise, people around him are likely to take advantage of that kind of situation. So it's one of the reasons why he's saying he should honorably step down at the end of 2019 after the election for the country to move on. So he has his own points there. And he's also saying that from what he has seen, neither Buhari nor his party, the All Progressive Congress, have the solution to the country's myriad of problems. So he should just step aside and become honorably and become one of the elder statesmen who can always offer his own advice, his own input from the sidelines, like other past head of state.
All right, now I'm going to ask this, and it's a very sensitive question in this regard. Now, does Chief Olusegun Obasanjo himself have the moral inclination to criticize the incumbent President Buhari? We remember his own subtle moves to change the constitution for a third-term bid. And when you think about things like this, you know, you can't help but...
The point you have just raised is moral standing, is a very vital issue you have just raised. I would rather look at it not from the angle of his third-term bid, because it's...
And which didn't go down well with the country during that period.
But rather, whether he really is in a position to recommend to Nigerians. If in 2013, he wrote a similar treatise about the then President Goodluck Jonathan, recommending to Nigerians a Buhari who is now the president. He was one of the backers. He backed Buhari through and through.
And he also backed Dr. Goodluck Jonathan initially.
So what I'm saying, if you are now coming, and he wants to recommend, because he went further to say that neither the APC nor the PDP, the two major political parties in the country, have the solution, because he has said they've been wobbling. They are wobbling political parties, and he maintained that they are still wobbling. He is saying he's now calling for a coalition of Nigeria, a movement. He said this coalition will be the movement that will drive Nigeria up and forward. I don't know whether I would like to queue behind Dr. Obasanjo for the new movement, because his recommendations in the past, like you said, he backed Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, whom he said failed. He backed Buhari, whom he is now saying has failed. He wants to come up with a coalition of Nigeria, and he said he's ready to be part of that coalition. Perhaps we need to see other members of that coalition, others who will be on board, to know whether the solution to Nigeria's problem lies in that coalition.
And talking about the solution itself, now if you look at the main thrust of that proposal or that idea that is, trying to get people to rally and hopefully do something, have a meaningful change. We have a situation whereby the main thrust is wrestling power away from the APC. But why is it that it's always about wrestling power, but not about governance, which should be the key area these political parties should be concentrating on?
Yes. Whatever that movement look like, we will be more interested in what they want to do. What is your message to the Nigerian people? What are your programs for the Nigerian people? What is your strategy to get Nigeria out of what Dr. Obasanjo calls a messy and sad situation? We have to see clear-cut strategy, a plan in place, a timeline that if we do X, Y, Z, in the next 5 years or in the next 4 years, this nation will be at this level of economic development. The economy will grow at this pace, at this percentage. There must be specifics, not just wrestling power. Because if it comes to issue of wrestling power, yes, it is that is what democracy is all about. You gain power first before you execute any program.
Exactly.
But that should be left to the Nigerian people to decide. Because one of the things about democracy is that democracy has its own follies. You can elect a poor government today. If you are not satisfied, in 4 years' time, you have to change that government.
All right. Now, let's take a look at the term corruption. Dr. Obasanjo said the Buhari government has turned a blind eye to this. Now, are you in agreement to this? Every single day we have this outpouring of achievement in anti-corruption crusades and what have you. And,
yes.
What do you make of this?
Yes. While the EFCC, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, has done more work in recent times by frontally confronting corrupt persons, by arresting and charging some of these persons to courts. But issues of corruption that has affected members of this government have been treated with kid gloves. And that is where I think the Buhari government has not done well.
All right. Okay, Emmanuel Efeni, Executive Director of this day newspaper and our own in-house analyst. Many thanks for your thought on the latest outburst, if I may call it that, from Dr. Olusegun Obasanjo. Many thanks. In other stories, former Minister of Education and convener of the Bring Back Our Girls group, Obi Ezekwesili, has been arrested and has been detained by the police in Abuja. In a series of posts on her Twitter handle, Obi Ezex, the former minister, said she was arrested alongside some members of the BBOG group. She said Aisha Yusufu, Maureen Kabrik, Jeff Okorafo, and 4 others were also arrested. Reacting to the reported arrest, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, in a statement via its Twitter page, demanded the immediate release of those arrested and allow them the freedom to exercise their rights. Still to come on Africa News Hour. Gambian army arrested 2 former generals who fled the country a year ago. With the ousted President Yahya Jammeh. Details in a moment. Stay with us.
There is nothing as symbolic as a door. It shuts to protect you and opens to give you much more. Everyone wants to succeed, not just count pennies. When life gets tough, I remember a few things. Difficulty and struggles are part of what life brings. Your strength comes from the support around you. A true friend believes in what you do, there to hold your hand through any weather. I found my partner, and we walked through doors together.
Diamond, your bank.
Welcome back to Africa News Hour with me, Ni Uyilo. It's a new dawn in Liberia as President George Weah has announced his first cabinet appointments hours after taking office. The ministers include former Senator Bezoga Findley as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the ex-chairman of CDC, Nathaniel McGill as Minister of State for Presidential Affairs, Samuel Twer as Minister for Finance and Development Planning, Charles Gibson as Minister for Justice, ex-Chief of Staff of Liberia's Armed Forces, Major General Daniel D. Zienkan as Minister for Defense, while Major General Zienkan's appointment has been announced pending approval from the Senate. A new Foreign Affairs Minister who is an ally of former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was recommended by Madam Sirleaf. Mrs. Sirleaf's Unity Party expelled her earlier this month over her alleged support for rival party candidate Weah, who won a runoff vote held in December to secure the presidency. The Gambian army says it has arrested and is questioning 2 former generals who fled the country a year ago with the ousted President Yahya Jammeh. An army statement said Umpa Mendi and Antamuna Tamba were detained at their homes after unexpectedly flying home and are now being held in an army barracks. It's unclear whether the men returned to the Gambia or what they are specifically accused of. A year after taking office, President Adama Barrow is still working to consolidate control over Gambian institutions, including the military. Legendary jazz trumpeter Hugh Masekela, a leading figure in the struggle to end apartheid and the father of South African jazz, is no more. He was aged 78. In a statement, his family said he had passed peacefully in Johannesburg after a protracted and courageous battle with prostate cancer. Masekela gained global recognition with his distinctive Afro-jazz sound and hits such as Soweto Blues. A 1977 song became synonymous with the anti-apartheid movement. Rise News reporter Ikenna Kingsley has this report on the legend Hugh Masekela.
South African jazz legend Hugh Ramapolo Masekela, who is known as father of South African jazz, has passed on after his long battle with prostate cancer. Born on the 4th of April 1939, Masekela was known for his jazz compositions and well-known songs such as Soweto Blues and Bring Him Back Home. The Witbank-born South African legend in 1959 joined the cast of Todd Matshikiza's all-African jazz opera King Kong. The musical, which also helped launch the career of Miriam Makeba, received permission to perform in London in 1961. He later went on to marry Miriam Makeba in 1964, but the couple divorced 2 years later in 1966. Masekela had success in the United States with the pop jazz tune Up, Up and Away in 1967. In 1970, he toured Guinea with Miriam Makeba and met Nigerian Afrobeat music icon Fela Anikulapo Kuti and the Ghanaian band Hedzole Sounds. This led to his breakthrough album, introducing Hedzole Sounds, one of the most highly regarded Afro-jazz albums of the decade. In June 2010, he performed at both the opening concerts of the FIFA World Cup and tournament's opening ceremony in Soweto's Soccer City. Masekela received numerous awards, including 2 Grammy Awards from 7 nominations. He is survived by wife Elinam Kofi, who he married in 1999, daughter Paula Twala, and son Selma Masekela from his relationship with Haytan Jesse Marie Lepere. Ikenna Kingsley, Arise
Great Hugh Masekela there. Earlier, I was joined by Arise chief correspondent John Cookson. I started by asking him what Hugh Masekela will be remembered for.
I was lucky enough to actually meet him, albeit briefly, on 2 occasions. One was back in the mid-80s when he was at Wembley Stadium, and that was to do with a free Nelson Mandela concert. And then in 2010 in Joburg at the World Cup at Soccer City, he played at the opening ceremony. It was just a brief chat on camera, but he came across as a true gentleman, a real professional, and a fantastic guy. How will he be remembered? Well, I mean, we use this word legend so often, but this man was a true music legend. He's been described as the father of South African jazz music. That's not an understatement by any means. But he was also a towering figure in the anti-apartheid movement. He penned the tune Soweto Blues, which became an anthem of the movement. So a huge loss to the world, a true gentleman, a fantastic musician, and also someone who was proud of his African roots, often spoke about that, but also a fierce campaigner in the anti-apartheid movement.
What can you tell us about his early life?
He was born in a desperately poor mining town, which at the time was called Witbank, in 1939. He was 78 when he died. He was born into a coal mining town. He got the inspiration to play the trumpet by watching a 1950s movie called A Young Man with a Horn, starring Kirk Douglas. And he pestered his teachers. He said, look, I want to play like that. And Father Trevor Huddleston, who also was an anti-apartheid campaigner, got him this trumpet, and he learned to play, and he just had this magical gift. In 1960, he left South Africa and spent 30 years in exile, tutored by, among others, Dizzy Gillespie and Louis Armstrong. He played many music festivals, including a famous one, the Monterey Film Festival in 1967, when other massive stars were there, like Janis Joplin, Otis Redding, and The Who. He also had a massive hit, of course, that many people will remember, which is Grazing in the Grass, which was gave him sort of international stardom, if you like. So he had a glittering career as a musician, but eventually did move back following the release of Nelson Mandela.
What contribution did he make to the anti-apartheid movement?
Well, as I say, he penned the anthem called Soweto Blues, which was heard so much and listened to by so many. He attended events continuously. And he went to cities like London to campaign, along with other activists, for the release of Nelson Mandela. So he was up there amongst all the activists. He often spoke about his African roots, and I'm just looking at some of the quotes. Fantastic one here. He said, my biggest obsession is to show Africa and the world that the people of Africa really are the best. And that was one famous quote by Masekela. So he was continuously active, especially during the 1980s, when the anti-apartheid movement really reached a crescendo, resulting in the release of Nelson Mandela. And he played a key role in Mandela's release.
Very good, John. Now that he is no more, is this the end of an era for African jazz?
I think not. I mean, there are other jazz musicians around, but I suppose the best that can be said is that whenever these musicians or singers they die, there's a vast music library of their music that we can listen to for forevermore, basically. Also, lots of video on social media. So Masekela will live on, but he is a huge loss. His death. Jacob Zuma saying today that it was an immeasurable loss to the music industry and to the country at large, speaking on behalf, I think, of all South Africans there. Other tributes pouring in today. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of Britain's Labour Party, said he was a titan of jazz and the anti-apartheid movement.
Now, John, finally, has there been any other statement released by the family apart from the one we got earlier?
Well, they said that he passed away quietly at home, surrounded by family. Of course, he was suffering from prostate cancer and had done for a number of years. And he was a fierce campaigner to make people aware, men to be aware of the risks of contracting prostate cancer and to get regular checks. So I'm sure that through the publicity that he was able to give, it saved many lives. So that was just another attribute of this amazing man's life, this making men aware of the risks of prostate cancer. Just an incredibly towering figure all round, I think.
Our chief correspondent there in London, John Cookson, reflecting on the lives of Hugh Masekela. Activists are demonstrating in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, to compel authorities to take action after reports surfaced of nursing mothers being raped and sexually assaulted at the country's biggest hospital. There, a social media post alleged that male staff members targeted women who had recently given birth when they went to feed their babies in a separate ward. Kenyatta National Hospital said the reports were untrue and denied any assaults took place, while the health minister ordered for an investigation. Now, have you ever complained about being forced to sleep in an airport after a delay? Now, what if the delay made you to, wait for it, stay in an airport for 3 months? Well, it actually happened to a Zimbabwean family of 8. We have that story after this break. Stay with us.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Then think Zenith, one of the biggest in Nigeria, with assets over $16 billion, listed among the 20 most influential brands in the world, and winner of Best Bank in Corporate Governance. The most customer-focused bank in Nigeria, a success built on 3 foundations, dedicated to people, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
You're welcome back. Business news now. Leading independent investment firm Afrinvest has launched the Nigerian Economy and Financial Markets 2017 Review and 2018 Outlook. The group managing director, Mr. Ike Chioke, says 2017 was a year of recovery for the Nigerian economy and financial market compared to the sharp business cycle contraction witnessed in 2016. Alongside weak market returns, he also says that 2018 hopes to be better than the previous years.
Today was a review of 2017 macroeconomic performance as well as the markets, and then our outlook, our views on what the economy and the markets will be doing in 2018. This year's report we've titled The Virtuous Cycle, because we've seen a confluence of events have come in to create a very benign environment for the Nigerian economy. From a macroeconomic point of view, we recovered from recession in 2016. We are projecting that 2017 will end at 0.7% GDP growth, and into 2018 we're looking at 2.1% GDP growth. We've seen that our budget is set at an oil price benchmark of $45 per barrel for the 8.6 trillion naira budget for 2018. Already, oil is trading at $70 per barrel. We expect it to hover in the $65 to $70 range through the course of the year. That means there's a positive surplus in the benchmark and will allow there to be an accretion that will end up making the excess crude account to expand in the course of the year.
Investors on the Nigerian Stock Exchange on the first day of the working week lost a total of 6 billion naira from their investment as profit taken takes center stage in the market. Now, the price movement chart showed that for one loser, there was a gainer, but the losers upstaged the gainers following losses in some heavily capitalized stocks. Specifically, 26 gainers and another 26 losers emerged at the end of trading. Earlier, I spoke with the President, Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers in Nigeria, Seyi Abe. Started by asking him if he thinks the upward trend in the Nigerian Stock Exchange can be described as a rally.
I'd like to put it the way you have put it. What we have seen really is not what we can call a rally. Okay, I'll put it as a recovery, because moving and coming from what happened in 2008 in the equity markets, in the stock market crash and all that, the assets on their own have been grossly undervalued. If you look at the performance of these companies, you will see that most of those equities are actually trading below their value, you know. There has been a lot of activities, a cocktail of activities actually, you know, from all stakeholders, from the government, talk about CBN, from the platform providers, the market participants, from the stockbrokers, their engagement with the government and all that. And that is why we can say the economy is out of recession, you know, a while ago. Now, if you look at the performance of the market last year, is in excess of 40% in terms of return. Within the month of January alone, don't forget January is still on.
Yes.
The market has done about 16% to 17%. Okay, before what we started to witness about a few days ago in terms of people taking profits and all that. So the equity market is just recovering. And the kind of attention and focus we are getting from the international community, you know, as well on the market is very high. There's quite a lot of focus on the market because people have analyzed this market and they have seen that there is value in the Nigerian market. I think we have number 3 in the whole world. So a lot of investments are going to be coming here. The federal government has tried via the instrumentality of the CBN, you know, in terms of their efforts in FX policies and windows, you know, that allows investors to come in and take their funds out at any point in time. In terms of security, we have won the major battle against the Boko Haram. We only hope that the one rearing his head now, you know, does not gain traction as much as we expect, so that government can quickly nip the headsman Sega on the board, so that it doesn't become another crisis, you know, that will affect the economic activities, you know, in the country. Again, the government is trying to refinance some of their exposures locally, and then they have gone out of the country. I mean, out of the situation of the nation to refinance some of their exposures, and because it's cheaper for them, you know, to do that. So these are made yields to drop, you know, on the fixed income side. Talk about treasury bills, you know, the bonds and all that. So we thought these alternative investments looking poor in terms of return.
All right.
You know, investors are poised, you know, to do more in the capital market.
Okay, now it's interesting that you mentioned that equities can sometimes be undervalued, you know, in the long run. Now, there's also concern over price manipulation in the Nigerian equity market. So, what's your take on that?
Well, manipulation, I would say no, because the market is very transparent now, and just like the commodity market, okay, it obeys the law of demand and supply. Okay, so manipulation, even if you want to manipulate, you must have the capacity to buy what you want to buy, because we all know the basic laws of demand and supply.
Yes.
You know, they are the demand, you know, the price will go up, you know, with a fixed supply level. So manipulation, no. And again, you know, you give it to the stock exchange. The oversight function has increased recently, you know, and so regulation have been tightened around all those sharp practices, and so we don't expect
the SEC is also on its toes regarding.
Oh yes, the SEC has done a lot in terms of you know, products, sophisticated products, world-class products, and what comes with that is they have increased their oversight functions in terms of regulations and all that. So those activities, I'm sure you won't see them in the market, you know, going forward and all that.
All right, I would like your thoughts on the NSE's demutualization process. Now, how will it enhance profit-making ventures within the NSE?
Well, you see, we have been on this for a long while. Members of the exchange, you know, wanted demutualization, and this is done in the advanced markets, you know. What's demutualization? We have a mutual exchange, and that's why you have members, you know, and all that and all that. But with the strides that our exchange has been taking recently, I think we need to demutualize in line with the world, you know, class exchanges that we are competing against. And if the exchange is demutualized, I think the exchange will now be run like a corporate, like a real corporate business entity.
So that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. It's not going to be.
All right, that was Sheyi Abi, President, Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers, reflecting on Nigeria's equity market. And on to all the stories. Africa is well represented at Davos, with many leaders from all the major economies in attendance. President Modi of India that's Prime Minister, has set the tone by observing that the rift that deliberations hope to bridge are about to be further widened by technology-driven transformation and a new world in which data is the key asset. A challenge facing African nations yet to come to terms with an even tougher tech-based future is as tough as tackling the freezing nearby steep Davos ski slopes. Reports also say African refugees are even scaling the Alps not too far from the meeting premises in their desperation to escape penury. Still, with newcomers like Zimbabwe having an opportunity to sell its reform and South Africa's Ramaphosa first Davos outing, investors will have the opportunity to reappraise opportunities in Africa at a time when the outlook is generally positive. Nigeria will have a strong delegation at Davos, led by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and key members of his economic team. And earlier, I was joined by Arise business analyst, Bode Oshosami. I started by asking him what the theme Africa in Davos meant for the continent.
Well, like they say, actions and speak louder than words and meetings. And for Africa, the situation is even worse. We heard reports that there are some Africans scaling the Alps by trying to escape penury, just as we have billionaires seated in Davos. So you can see that the contrast is extremely huge. But the theme is important for Africa. I'm concerned that Africa is just coming out of a walkout situation. Many countries are getting over issues and just coming out of them. A workout situation is what a country does when it's in trouble. But they need a larger vision, a bolder vision for human development, for people issues, for welfare. And if you look at the speech made by Modi, where he says things are going to get worse because the environment is going to be more technology-driven, and the kind of growth you are going to see is not going to be kind to environments where education, innovation is not top on the agenda. So I think the need for serious action from Africa is what I hope will come out from this forum.
Is this not another talk shop in which all of these have been put in place?
Well, we've seen talk shops before, but let me just mention some of the things that have been said at the opening remarks that, to address these issues of the rifts. One thing is important, having adequate social protection for the vulnerable, massive investment in re-education, particularly for Africa, massive investments in re-education, vocational skills. The reason people go to China is not because China is cheap. China is no more cheap from a labor perspective, but the skills, vocational skills, tooling skills, technical skills, IT skills, they are there. So Africa needs to invest heavily in skills and in innovation. Innovation is very, very important, as well as infrastructure, providing opportunities for women and helping education and protection for young girls. So many of these issues we already know, but the actions tend to be very muted, and one hopes the presence of a lot of the key African leaders at this meeting will provoke change, particularly in the area of action.
If you look at Zimbabwe, the new player at Davos, is this the beginning of change for that country?
Well, it is good that Zimbabwe is at Davos, and Mnangagwa going to Davos sends a message that he really wants to reach out to investors, because that is the flagship forum where investors and politics and civil societies meet together. However, having said that, he's making all the right noises in the Financial Times, in Bloomberg, at Davos, but we have to see exactly what he does. Also, there's an election that is coming, but saying that they are ready to roll back all the rules on indigenization, to open up Zimbabwe and be more investor-friendly is definitely the right thing to be saying here. Ramaphosa also is going to be there, and he's certainly seen as the, if you like, leader in Africa now, especially now that South Africa is now seen as an innovation leader. They joined the top 50 in Bloomberg's Innovation Index, which was released just today. So South Africa is definitely seen as the leader in terms of where people can easily begin to tap into the Africa Rising narrative. Nigeria is also going to be there. But I think the important thing is all these countries are there. We are used to hearing words being said and all the right things being muted. But I think the important thing is soon after this, we hope to see actions, concrete actions from all these countries that tell the world that Africa is now serious for business.
Indeed, Odiai, that's all very well and good. Now, the decisions reached at Davos, how practical is it to global development?
Well, the decisions at Davos are very key because you have the key institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, America, the US, all the key, Europe is going to be very well represented. So all the key players are going to be there, and they are there together. You heard Modi when he spoke about cohesion in addressing the rifts. There's a realization that the rich can't just keep getting richer and the poor left behind, either within countries or across countries. So I think one has to give the theme a chance to play out. We are watching very closely, listening to all the deliberations, but Africa should also understand that you cannot expect somebody else to come and solve your problems. There are things you yourself have to do, and one hopes they go back to their own countries with some of these corrective initiatives.
Odiai Oshosami, our Rise News business analyst in London. You're on to Africa News are still to come. Tennis great Serena Williams reveals her excitement to watch the Nigerian bobsleigh women's team at the 2018 Winter Olympics. Plus, the story of a family who lived for 3 months in an airport because they did not have the right visas. Stay with us. It's good to have you back on Africa News I'm Ni Huilo. And in sports, tennis great Serena Williams has revealed her excitement and anticipation to watch the Nigerian bobsleigh women's team at the upcoming 2018 Winter Olympics. The trio of Seun Adigun, Ngozi Onwumere and Okwoma Omeoga have caught the eyes since they made history as the first Nigerians to qualify for the Winter Olympics and the first African set to compete in bobsled. She tweeted the feature video of the trio by headphone giants Beats by Dre. Video by Beats by Dre titled Above the Noise shows the incredible journey of the team before their history-making qualification to the 2018 Winter Games. Bobsleigh team have enjoyed a roller coaster year, which saw them get a popular interview on the Ellen Show. Earlier, I was joined by my colleague Anil Sangara. I started by asking him about the excitement the Nigerian bobsled team was generating.
Serena Williams, like all of us, are really excited to see this historic Nigerian female bobsleigh team compete in the Olympics. And I was looking at Serena Williams' Twitter page. She has 10.5 million followers. So already it's had 20. That Instagram, that Twitter video she posted has had more than 22,200 likes, and it's been retweeted more than 10,700 times. So we obviously have been reporting this story on Odiai News. But when you have one of the most famous sports athletes in the world post this video, no doubt the achievement of this Nigerian female bobsleigh team is going to reach a lot more people, and obviously excitement is building before those Winter Olympics, which takes place in South Korea in February. Let's just recap what a historic moment this is, not only for Africa but for Nigeria. They are the first team in Africa to qualify for the bobsleigh tournament. First ever athletes to represent Nigeria in any sport in the Winter Olympics. You also have Ghana's Akwasi Frimpong. He's become the first skeleton athlete to compete in the Winter Olympics. They created this GoFundMe page in order to try and raise funds to qualify for these Olympics, and they raised their target of $75,000 nearly in just 11 months. That saw sponsors get involved. That's why you've seen the likes of Visa and Under Armour get involved, if you like, to join in this bandwagon. And obviously everyone is sort of comparing this story with the incredible Jamaican bobsleigh team of the Calgary Olympics back in 1988, which was immortalized in the film Cool Runnings, where, you know, again, another country which didn't have a climate for, didn't really have a winter for the Winter Olympics. And you know, I think a lot of people who are old enough will remember how that story really captured the world's attention, and I have a feeling this will be the same when these incredible Nigerian athletes compete in these Winter Olympics, and particularly now that you have probably the world's most famous sportswoman also get involved and tweet her excitement.
Anil Sagira there on Nigeria's first ever women's bobsleigh team. In entertainment news, Ebony Life movie The Wedding Party 2 is now the highest grossing Nollywood movie of all time. According to the latest data released by the producers, the Niyi Akiwolayan film has earned 412 million naira at the Nigerian box office and 55 million naira abroad, making it a total of 467 million naira worldwide. The spot was previously held by The Wedding Party Part 1, which had pulled in a total of 450 million naira to become the highest grossing movie. Its success started with its racking in 20 million naira on its opening day, becoming the biggest opening day in Hollywood. Momentum continued into the week as the film hauled 100 million naira in just 5 days. And 18 days after its release, the film had grossed 312 million naira. From the release of this data, The Wedding Party films have now earned a total of 917 million naira, making it the most successful franchise in Nollywood's history. The Wedding Party is a partnership between Ebony Life Films, Film One Distribution, Ink Blot Productions, and Koga Studios.
London to Ekene, say Bello, so where you wanna go? Let me take you there.
And finally, if you've ever complained about being forced to sleep in an airport after a delay, spare a thought for one Zimbabwean family who have finally left Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi airport, where they've lived for the past 3 months. A family, 4 children under the age of 11 and 4 adults, first arrived in Bangkok in May. When they tried to leave in October for Spain, they found they didn't have the right visas. They couldn't legally re-enter Thailand as they'd overstayed their tourist visas and had to pay a fine. But they said they could not return to Zimbabwe because they faced persecution. Meanwhile, the family stayed inside the departure area, being looked after by airport staff. According to a Thai Immigration Bureau spokesman, they finally left Bangkok on Monday afternoon. Very interesting there. And news just in, 100 people have been injured following a collision between a school bus and a truck in Gauteng province of South Africa. Hopefully we'll get you more details on that in our subsequent bulletins. And it's a wrap on African News Art, but just before we go, a recap of our top stories. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo, in a blistering statement, calls on President Buhari not to seek re-election in 2019. Liberian President George Weah announces first cabinet appointments hours after taking office. And legendary jazz trumpeter Hugh Masekela, a leading figure in the struggle to end apartheid and the father of South African jazz, is dead. You've been watching African News Hour with me, Niyi Uyilo. Please keep it here on the Rise News. We leave you with the sounds of legendary jazz trumpeter Hugh Masekela, who has died aged 78.
It's been a great year for agribusiness. With our weather and the amazing range of soil available to us, the fallow lands are birthing their magnificent potential. The Central Bank of Nigeria, under President Buhari's administration, is spearheading this progress, and everyone is getting in on it. The local farmer on the Anchor Borrowers Program and the international investors, taking advantage of the new policies geared towards easy foreign investment, stabilized exchange rate, and FX market. The harvest is green and lush, and we are just getting started. Come, invest in Nigeria. Discover what the green in our flag really stands for. Nigeria, ready for business. An initiative of Greenfield Assets Limited.
As a fashion writer, I know how quickly trends are created and changed. In business, it's no different. To stay ahead, I needed a plan flexible enough to meet my changing communication needs. More Business 2.0 didn't just give me voice and data in one package. I got a whole lot more. With More Business, setting up my website was no problem. But I'm not just a fashion writer. I also own a home decor store before I decided to open an accessory store. With my customized More Business plan, managing my staff's communication is easy. No matter how frequently they come, oh, they go. With 9 Mobile's new online self-service this week, I could adapt my plans to include this.
From 2,000 Naira, choose a business bundle, customize your staff's voice and data lines, and enjoy a variety of add-on business services. Dial *200*5# now to subscribe. More Business.
The best way to predict the future is to create it. There's a special breed of achievers out there that are called tomorrow's people, the highly creative ones who live in the future. They imagine what will be and strive to make it happen. They are bold. They refuse to wait for the future. Tomorrow bends and conforms to their ideas. At Access Bank, we share the same sentiments. We've been able to grow our bank to become a leading player in Nigeria with a strong presence across the continent, adopting best practice in everything we do. Our mantra for success is simple: speed, service, and security. Those who shape tomorrow strive for and demand perfection. At Access Bank, our service culture of speedy response and drive for excellence is the blueprint for creating customer experiences that will echo for generations. Come, let's work together and take tomorrow.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.